Hi, Peter Charles here, folks, fly fishing. And let's talk about a problem that we get into with some fly lines, and that's where should we be knowing the grain weight of the fly line, or do we go just by the rating number? Now, if you are into the two-handed world, you live, eat, breathe, sleep grain weights. I mean, we don't even bother with rating numbers most of the time. It's what is the grain weight of the line. That's all we care about. And when I say grain weight, what I'm talking about is the weight of the head of the line measured in grains. In Europe, you would measure it in grams. Same problem. So if you're hearing grains and you're in Europe, think grams. Same issue. So two-handed, we're used to working with grains or grams. If you're in the trout business, well, you just go by the line rating number. This is a 5-weight line. I put in a 5-weight rod. I put in a 5-weight sized reel. End of story. I don't even have to do any more thinking. So if I want to buy a line for my 5-weight rod, I just go to the store and pick a box that says 5-weight. End of it. That's all I have to think about. What happens though when you're in that sort of gray zone at the higher end of the single hand lines, where we're talking 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 weight lines? And do we really need to worry about grain weight, or can we go just by the rating number? And the answer to that is maybe. It's not clear. And I want to illustrate the nature of the problem using some old airflow lines and some new airflow lines that do the same job. So what I've got here, I've got an airflow sniper line. This is a weight forward 9-weight intermediate. I have the same line in the old 40 plus cold water salt in a weight forward 9-weight intermediate. All right. So this 40 plus is about 15 years old, give or take, and this one is a new model. I've only had this a couple of years. So you see that they've got two 9-weights, 15 years or 13 years apart, thereabouts. What's the difference? First off, can I both use these on a 9-weight rod? And the answer to that is yes. Most definitely, you can pick both these lines up, use them on a 9-weight rod. That's why they're called 9-weights. However, they are going to perform differently. Now, something else I should say, they're both 30 foot long in terms of their head. So we're doing an apples to apples comparison. They're both 30 foot long, and here's the kicker. This 9-weight head is about 375 grains. This 9-weight head is about 325. All right? So 375, 325. Here's the key. Let's move those. This is the 10-weight version of that, okay? Or I should say of this. This is the 10-weight version of that. I know it says Sync 7, I just don't have the box for the intermediate. But I've got my intermediate 10-weight, and guess what? It's 375 grains, the same as that 9. So we've got a 9-weight at 375, we've got a 10-weight at 375. So what that will tell you is that I could use this 10-weight line on a 9-weight rod if it handles this line very well. So now you've got a situation where you're flipping between 9-weights and 10-weights, and they're the same grain weight. So that's what it gets confusing. And just look at this. It doesn't get any better. This is the 8-weight intermediate, the new one, sniper line, on my 8-weight reel. Here's the 9-weight on my 9-weight reel. They're the same weight, 325, 330 in that ballpark. Both 30-foot heads. So apples to apples comparison. Same weight. One's an 8, one's a 9. So the thing is here is that some of your rods may be perfectly happy with either, an 8-weight. Let's go back to my 9-weights here. That's 375, that's 325. Both 9-weights, your rod may handle both, or it may be happy with one and not happy with the other. And you'd be saying to yourself, okay, this doesn't make sense. They're both 30-foot heads, they're both 9-weights. My rod likes one, doesn't like the other. And that's entirely possible, and it's because there's 50 grain difference between the two lines. So what I'm getting at here is you have to have an awareness of where these lines sit in terms of their relative weights. So it answers the question why the line is working, this line is working on your rod and that line isn't. Now, in my situation here, I'm finding that I can use both these rods on my NRX 9-weight or my NRX Plus 9-weight. Both work equally well. It's hard to tell the difference, in weight. Yeah, one feels a little heavier than the other, but that's about it. Your rod doesn't care. Your rod may not care either. But it's important to know this, to know that they're not all the same just because they say 9-weight on the box. And the head length is important. You've got to be in the same ballpark with the head length when you're judging this. But if, in this case, they're both 30 feet, so if you went to another manufacturer's line that was also around 30 feet, you could use the grain weight that they're telling you for their line to do the same assessment. And here's part of the problem is some manufacturers are very good at supplying this information and some are not. So I weigh them to find out. And sometimes there were some of the old websites gave you the information, now the new website doesn't. It gets to be a bit of a pain that you've got the information in some places and not others. It becomes a big complication. So if you don't know what the grain weight of the line is, you don't have a way of measuring it, be aware that there are differences, and it could explain why one line works better on your rod than the other when they're both 9-weights and they're both 30 foot long for a head. So it'll help you understand that there can be these big differences. And the other thing is that you get into is if I have an AFTMA standard 9-weight with a short head, okay, let's say a 35-foot head, and it's AFMTA, there we go, standard, it's considerably lighter than these. It's 240 grains over 30 feet compared to 325 or 375. It's way lighter. I mean, 375 is pushing 12 weight, okay, on the AFTMA scale. 12 is 380. So you're talking a 12 weight. This thing, it's basically, it says 9-weight on the box. It's basically a 12. This is basically an 11. So, if you compare it to an AFTMA rated line, you're going to feel a big difference in the way these lines cast. And they all say 9-weight on the box. We don't get this in trout fishing. The trout lines, you get about a half a line weight difference in most trout lines. But as soon as you get into the pike, the bass, the salmon, the saltwater species lines, your weights can be all over the map depending on the purpose of the line and the species it's intended for and the size of fly it's intended to cast and what are the likely wind conditions, yada, yada, yada. So be aware. This can be the reason why one line seems to work and the other one doesn't. So if you're not interested in knowing the grain weights, I think that's all you really need to know is they're not all created equal. So give that some thought next time you go shopping for a heavier line. Cheers.